The Detroit Lions were knocking on the door of the Super Bowl last season. Can they get there in 2024? We're examining the state of the Lions roster today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who make Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
Joe, you feel taller than me today, and I don't like it, so I've kind of just bumped my video down a little, my camera down. Just see how like my shoulders are sitting below yours today? It's bothering me a little bit.
I don't know what to say. Yeah.
I don't know. What'd you do yesterday? What was your special thing as a dad that you did yesterday?
Smoked racks of ribs and then went to the pool with my kids.
Outstanding.
Well, how about you?
Play with the kids intermittently throughout the day. Took a little break to go to the gym and then came back and did kebabs. We did kebabs yesterday.
Very good. Yeah. Steak, chicken, what do we do?
It was chicken, green peppers, red peppers, onions. So I know we'd have to peel those off for you, but don't hold the whole kebab against it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the day yesterday.
When I was at the pool, we were there in our neighborhood pool, and there's another family with similar age kids, and the husband wasn't there, and he was playing golf. And I realized in that moment there are two different dads on Father's Day: the ones that just stay in it with the kids, and the other ones that stay
out for the whole day.
Out of here! I'm on the golf course. Don't talk to me.
I try to provide that for my wife on Mother's Day, and she don't want anything to do with it. I'm like, I got the kids. You go do whatever you want to do. Go pamper yourself. Go do something. Go shopping. Whatever. And she's like, nah, I just want to go to the park with the kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no wrong way. Like, I'm not criticizing. If you went and played golf yesterday or whatever people do, that's fine. But I think I'm more in the like, I kind of just want to be with the kids.
No wrong way. Just like there's no wrong way to build a roster as long as you win games.
I just, big caveat there. Caveat.
Well, as long as you win games, right? Yeah. The Detroit Lions did that after a much criticized draft class from 2023. Lo and behold, just taking the good players regardless of positional value. You get good players, there's a nice infusion. Remember when everybody was all upset they took a tight end in the top 40? What'd Sam Laporta do last year, Joe?
Yeah.
Linebacker in the top 20. How'd Jack Campbell look last year?
Keep going.
Oh, a safety who plays in the nickel in the second round. But turns out he might have been, a top 3 defensive player on the team last year?
Keep going.
Jahmyr Gibbs, running back, top 20. How many yards from scrimmage did he have last year? 1,600, 1,500?
The good players are the premium.
Good players are the premium. That's right. Detroit did that. Now, a little different flavor for this year's draft class. We'll get into that as we talk about this football team. But we're going to start with looking at the Detroit Lions offensively. If you're new to the series, if you didn't see it last year or the year before that, this is the third year we're doing this exercise. We assess a team a day for 8 weeks, and we put all the players on the depth chart into buckets, whether that's cornerstones, quality starters, adequate starters, replacement level starters, quality depth, incomplete evaluations, rookies, practice squad caliber players, and non-roster caliber players. And the objective is to have kind of a firm feel of all the position groups for all the teams across the league, and there's numerical values that are attached to these, and it's weighted for positional value. You get a roster power rankings, and then we do coaching staffs, and you get like your full team power rankings for the start of the season. We adjust it as the season goes along, but this is us taking the summertime to show our work and get really deep dive into all 32 of the teams so that you know when we talk about your team, we did the homework. Joe, the Lions offensively, they spent a lot of money on the offensive side of the ball. but they spend a lot of money on their own guys between a new contract for Penei Sewell, a new contract for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and a new contract for Jared Goff. What stands out the most to you when you look at the offensive side of the ball for the Lions?
I think, I try to keep it to one thing because I have a lot I can spew out about this Lions offense, but I think the strength of it still is the offensive line, where center, left tackle, right tackle, you got a cornerstone in Frank Ragnow at center, a cornerstone in Penei Sewell at right tackle, who's unbelievable. I mean, how young he is, how good he is, how much longer he's going to be at a high level. You feel like this is like legitimately for the next 10 plus years, one of the best offensive linemen in the game. And then, of course, Taylor Decker, who's a quality starter at left tackle. And then they kind of let Jonah Jackson walk in free agency, which I thought was a good decision, especially for the economic value of
cost. Holy cow, he got paid a ton.
Oh, enjoy that, Rams, and they'll enjoy Kevin Zeitler, and he'll,
for half the cost.
Yeah, and now he's not a long-term solution, but Kevin Zeitler's been the model of consistency at guard in the NFL for a long, long time.
Made his first Pro Bowl last year.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, I felt like he's been like a quality starter for 8 years.
And then, of course, Graham Glasgow, who's obviously at his best when he's with the Detroit Lions. So you have a really strong offensive line. And I think that's what's been impressive to me about this offense under Ben Johnson is like they do have good skill players. Don't get me wrong. But even entering last season, Sam Laporta's a rookie. Jahmyr Gibbs is a rookie. David Montgomery's first season with the team. Jared Goff was like kind of given away by the Rams, right? Like they gave up 2 first-round picks for Stafford.
Right.
And Ben Johnson's been able to like engineer this high-profile offense, despite not, you don't look at it and say superstars all over the skill players. I know that that's changed as, of course, last season happened, but I think that the identity is this offensive line. It's Ben Johnson and his scheme and his play calling. And I think the center and those 2 tackles and good guards really make this offense go round.
Yeah, I think the offensive line Detroit should feel really good about. I don't know how well equipped they are to handle a lot of injury adversity.
Right.
You look at the depth and 2 rookies in Giovanni Manu, who played his college in Canada, was a 4th-round pick, and Christian Mahogany. Those guys are going to be really important pieces as day 3 draft picks for the depth of this unit, just because you look at the rest of the guys and Colby Swordstall's kind of like the next guy up as the 6th offensive lineman, you would guess right now.
Yeah.
So Mahogany was kind of perceived as a high floor player coming out of Boston College, maybe not a super high ceiling. And Manu, you assume they're leaning into the developmental upside for him as a player. But I look at this group and I admire how good the starting 5 is. And I think this is kind of applicable across a lot of the roster. And that's to be expected to some degree when you're creating an infusion and you're starting from square one, 2 seasons ago with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes kind of having to build the entire foundation up. You shouldn't be expecting to be brimming with talent across all the positions. It's finding starters and building a complete roster and then filling out the depth elements of it. So that's not necessarily a big surprise, but I do think Detroit's a little bit of a high risk team as far as being able to sustain a few critical injuries spots. Like if they lose Penei Sewell, it changes my perspective. If they lose Amon-Ra St. Brown, it changes my perspective of Detroit. Like they have a few key catalyst players. Those cornerstones for them on offense are really critical players.
Amon-Ra St. Brown feels like one of the most important skill players in the NFL relative to their team because we just don't know. Jameson Williams, dude, I loved him coming out of Alabama, but I haven't seen anything with consistency in the NFL that says that he's going to be a dude. Khalif Raymond, I think is a nice like X factor utility player. DPJ had like a good season in Cleveland a couple of years ago, and then he was traded for nothing and then re-signed for nothing. You're of course Sam Laporta, but at wide receiver, it's like Amon-Ra St. Brown, and we're crossing our fingers on Jameson Williams. Don't have a lot of depth there. Again, running the ball. 2 great running backs in Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, how they complement each other. Sam Laporta, a big part of the equation here. But I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's value to this team cannot be overstated.
Yeah, and I think that's why, the course of last season and him having as good of a year as he did, and then he gets the contract that he does where it resets the market for 5 minutes and a cup of coffee, and then AJ Brown gets his contract and
Yeah.
the market's reset again. But like it wasn't necessarily a big surprise to me just because he is so critical and he earns hard yards and he runs great routes and he's really reliable and he wins over the middle of the field and he wins down the field, for a guy who maybe didn't have the most dynamic athletic testing. And that was a big part of the reason why he slid in the draft a little bit. I know you and I both really liked Amon-Ra.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's become the player and kind of transcended part of that in part because of opportunity. But now there's a chemistry element that makes it almost impossible for anybody to kind of supersede him in the passing game there for targets. Although you're obviously very excited about what Sam Laporta brings to the table. And then Jahmyr Gibbs is an offensive weapon that you can move around. I think as long as they have those three pieces in the passing game, they're going to be just fine because there's enough different ways that they can attack you. But if they were to lose one of them for an extended period of time, I do think that changes the way they would have to play some games offensively.
Interesting team offensively, obviously very successful, top 5 in scoring and yards last season with, a lot of that coming back. I'm excited to see what Ben Jonson and company has cooked up for 2024. We'll shift gears to the defensive side of the football here in just a moment, so be sure to stick with us. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more, and you can bet on all of it over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. They got some fun Lions stuff that you can check out. How about this? Aidan Hutchinson. You think he's the defensive player of the year? You can get that at plus 1,600. Terrion Arnold, good-looking young corner. Think he could be the defensive rookie of the year? You can get that at plus 1,200. They have the Lions over-under for wins in 2024 set at 10.5, and Lions with the best odds to win the NFC North at plus 145. So some fun Lions action that you can check out. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
So kind of the centerpiece of the offensive discussion for Detroit was how much everything is back. I look over on the defensive side of the ball. You got Carlton Davis acquired. You have Terrion Arnold traded up for in the draft. You have DJ Reader signing in free agency. Marcus Davenport, the new other edge opposite Aidan Hutchinson. For Detroit, the story defensively for me is all of the new and how exciting that is for what it means for the picture of who Detroit is as a defensive unit.
And that's not a bad thing. I mean, this was a 23rd scoring defense, 19th in total defense last season. They needed to be a better team on the defensive side of the football. I love the trajectory of Aidan Hutchinson, Kyle. I mean, he was my number 1 player that year, and he went number 2, obviously, and I think Aidan Hutchinson's everything that the identity of this football team is, with the unrelenting effort that he brings as a pass rusher. Over 100 pressures last season. And he plays high volume of snaps. He's highly impactful. And this defensive tackle duo, Alim McNeil and DJ Reader, has a chance to be really, really good. Now, those guys got to stay healthy. Right. That's kind of been an issue for both of them. And I don't love their depth behind them. But you can line up and have Hutchinson, McNeil, DJ Reader, and then somebody else, whether that's, of course, Marcus Davenport, who they gave a small 1-year deal to, but John Comiskey, who's been successful here, and James Houston as well, James Houston has eight sacks for his career on a total of 116 pass rush snaps. So we'll see. I know he was injured last season, but to me, I get excited about defenses when I like what they have up front. And I think there's some questions about the depth for the defensive line, but there's also some really exciting high-end players that move the needle for me.
So this team already averaged just 3.7 yards per rush allowed last year defensively. And then they added DJ Reader.
Yeah.
Here's my favorite context of the Detroit Lions rushing defense last year.
It's going to be about San Francisco, isn't it?
Well, no, it's not going to be about San Francisco.
Okay.
Here is, in order, the games in which Detroit allowed 100 yards team collectively rushing on the season. 90, 82, 44, 27, 99, 46, 146 against the, who do you think it was?
I know who it is. It's the Ravens.
It's the Baltimore Ravens. Who plays quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens?
Lamar
Jackson. Oh, okay. So he had 36 rushing yards in that game. So they still would have had 100 over a team, but one of the best rushing offensive football. And then they go 80, 98, 183. Who was that team?
The Bears.
Who do you think got over 100 rushing yards in that game?
Was it Justin Fields?
Justin Fields.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. And then you go 109, Packers. Okay. Props. Somebody tagged us with an athletic quarterback, but not necessarily a quarterback who's known for his electric ability to run the ball. The Saints. Okay. You got us twice in a row. And then the Bears. Again, guess who had enough rushing yards that if he didn't contribute those yards, you wouldn't have given up 100 yards collectively as a team?
Senior Fields.
And Justin Fields. 83, 17 rushing yards allowed. 61, 89. That's the regular season. So 3 of their 5 100-yard conceded performances on the year were to Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields. Really good run defense, adding DJ Reader to the mix of that with what they have at linebacker with Jack Campbell. You've got one of the better tackling D-gap defenders in Brian Branch. You got these big safeties. I think that's the thing that stood out to me about Detroit, too, is like the safeties and Melifonwu and Joseph. Those are big dudes playing safety. Mm-hmm. And now you're better on the perimeter. That was the big liability for Detroit, was the cornerback position last year. And to get Carlton Davis and Terrion Arnold stepping into those spots as upgrades, and now you're even stronger in the middle, I think Detroit should be really excited about what the defense can look like this year.
Yeah, you mentioned the running quarterbacks. I think you got to mention the NFC Championship game against San Francisco, where they gave up 155 on the ground, and a lot of that was to Brock Purdy. And those scrambles by Brock Purdy. Yeah, those are big plays for San Francisco. I think you look at the margins of that game, I thought they mattered a ton. So probably stopping mobile quarterbacks is going to be, I think, really important for Detroit to kind of shore up their defense a little bit. But obviously the passing defense, they gave up. They were 29th in net yards per attempt last year. So adding the talent at corner, I think the development of Kerby Joseph at safety, in addition to Ifeatu Melifonwu, you mentioned him. He's kind of been groomed for this starting role. And down the stretch late, he got a chance to start a bunch of games and played well. And I think he's going to be a really important piece of this equation moving forward. So,
you want to know what else is crazy about Detroit metrically last year? Team that's this good against the run. They were 29th in scoring percentage in defense last year in the red zone. 29th in league in red zone scoring defense. For a team that gives up 3.7 yards per rush, was really good in that area. I think their formula and what they win after defensively makes a ton of sense. And the offensive side of the ball, it was working. So maintaining continuity there and surviving another Ben Johnson head coach interview tour this offseason and bringing him back. I think this offseason it's very sensible for Detroit, and it makes a lot of sense based on where they were as a team last year.
When you look at their defense, I think my question comes from defensive tackle depth. Behind Reader, behind McNeil, what do we have? Le'Veon Wuzurike, who was a high pick, has struggled to stay healthy. When he's been on the field, he hasn't made much of an impact. You need Broderick Martin, I think, in year 2 to take a step. I like Mekhi Wingo, but he's a rookie. I think those guys are going to be important here.
I think the edge the edge depth can help you a little
Kaminsky
bit.
Can reduce inside a little bit.
Kaminsky can reduce inside. Pascal's a bigger guy too.
Yeah, you're going to need that.
That'll at least bridge you. But bless you when you're able to run out there with McNeil and Reader. Those two guys on the field, they're going to warrant double teams. A lot of double teams between the two of them.
Good luck. Because Hutch.
And now you're isolated one-on-one on the edge.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to get skill players from width to get up on the linebackers. That's a tough formula. You're not going to run downhill at this team with a lot of success if those guys are healthy.
The other thing that's interesting about the Detroit Lions defense is how they do kind of play linebackers. Like, there's not 2 that take every single snap, which is, Anzalone commands a lot of those, but like they work in Derek Barnes. They work, of course, Jack Campbell has a big role here. It's kind of interesting how they are a little bit interchangeable with that, where, a lot of teams are kind of static with just playing a couple of guys. But yeah. Derek Barnes in that sub role, he does some good things.
He played about 2/3 of the defensive snaps last year for Detroit. Anzalone played over 1,000 snaps. Barnes actually outsnapped Jack Campbell by about 70 snaps on the season. So three linebackers. Not a lot of teams play three linebackers get more than 650 snaps defensively.
Right,
Detroit's one of them.
Detroit's
and I think that's a testament to why they are hard at times to run the ball against. Too, because they're going to say, look, we're going to play these guys. We got some sub guys that can play in space. Anzalone certainly charged with doing a lot of that. But at the end of the day, they are linebackers.
Yeah. And having a guy like Branch and how he can fit and tackle, so big. So big. All right, folks, we are going to tie a ribbon on this Lions discussion on the other side of it, so be sure to stick with us.
So for the first two cycles of the offseason for Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, I guess this is what they're entering into year 4. This is the first time for me that I look at this team and I really feel like how much better this team gets is going to be predicated on internal players as compared to external reinforcements. I know we've just got done heaping a lot of praise in the direction of their offseason plan defensively and all the players that they brought in. But you think about this draft class from last year with Laporta and Branch and Gibbs and Campbell, like you go full. You just mentioned Broderick Martin being a really important piece. And then you got Jameson Williams in his spot as kind of a critical X factor in the passing game at wide receiver. So for me, yeah, I think the infusion of talent defensively makes a lot of sense, but their strengths were still strengths and still are strengths. But the next level for this team has to, I think, come from players internal with their own internal player development. And because this team had so far to go when they started the process, this is the first time in this process that I feel like that for Detroit.
That's a good spot to be. I mean, you just ripped off a bunch of good young players that I think have a lot of ceiling to develop into. And so I like that more than, hey, we spent all this money in free agency. We need these guys to be good that other teams, let walk, right? I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think that's a healthy place for Detroit to be. One of the things that really stands out to me about Detroit is if you look at their top 10 receivers from last year, they're all back except for Josh Reynolds. I mean,
Draft Dudes alumni, Josh Reynolds.
That's crazy year-over-year continuity. But the guy that stands out to me, I think, I'm expecting the Detroit Lions offense to be very, very good. Jameson Williams. If he can get it going. And he's young. He just turned 23 in March. I mean, I know he's entering his 3rd season, but he's very young.
Mm-hmm.
Man, if that guy gets it going, dude, good luck. Because that adds a legit vertical field stretching element. And his presence alone kind of does that. And when your best players are more underneath middle of the field targets than St. Brown and Laporta, of course, your running backs, this type of guy really, really can change the spacing of that offense and open up even more. I think he's, to me, the entire X factor for this offense.
And here's where I think Detroit's in a really exciting spot. Because we've talked about the foundation of the team. We've talked about the guys that need to take the next step. And this isn't really the purpose of this show, but I think it is a big talking point because there's not a lot that you and I really need to come to consensus on. Take a look at their expiring contracts for next offseason.
How do they look? I didn't look at that.
Well, I can tell you right now, they have about $40 million in cap space right now. It's about 38 and change.
Good spot to be. Yeah.
Healthy. They're projected to have about $44.5 million in cap space in 2025, according to Over the Cap, with a $260 million cap forecast. Spoiler, it's probably going to be at least $15 million more.
That's a very conservative estimate.
Right. You're going to have probably $60 million in cap space to work with. Here are the expiring contracts. Kevin Zeitler, 35-year-old guard. Okay, need a guard. I wouldn't have paid Jonah Jackson $16 million a year either.
Right.
Yeah, I'll let him walk for the 12 games you're going to get from him every season. Donovan Peoples-Jones, Kendall Vildor, John Kaminsky, Ben Neiman, Emmanuel Mosley, Derek Barnes, Alim McNeil's the big one. Ifeatu Melifonwu, Kyle Pico, Levi Onwuzurike. I believe Taylor Decker's avoided contract, so that's one that looms a little bit. But if you look at
none of that feels overwhelming.
Right. There's nothing overwhelming for $60 million of cap space. It looks like Carlton Davis also voids. That's an interesting decision, but they got him relatively cheap via acquisition, via trade. So, like, you can take it or leave it. And they used their second round pick on Ennis Rakestraw this year. So, like, they're going to have a guy in-house to kind of get a feel for. They're really well positioned.
Yeah.
And not just for this year. And oh, by the way, you played in the conference championship game last year.
Clearly one of the best teams in the NFC.
Yes.
I think that they're going to be right in it. It's not, what they did last year wasn't a fluke. This is a talented football team that's well coached.
Did we look at their schedule? I'll be honest, I don't know what it looks like.
Oh, I'm well aware of it. Yeah, I've peeked at it. We could see them primetime week 1 Sunday Night Football, hosting the Rams. 3 of the first 4 at home.
They get 2 primetime games in September too. They get Monday night against Seattle in week 4. I see at home. Both of those at home.
The problem with the schedule is the week 5 bye. You hate that. That's too early, right? Like it's before at Dallas, but
to get the bye. Obviously, every team's a little different as far as like injuries. If you get hit early in the year or whatever, but like in a vacuum, I think a double-digit bye, like 10, 11, 12, right in that spot. It's a great time to have bye.
You can reset. Okay, we got these last 5, last 6, last 4. This is what we got to do. Reset. Week 5. I mean, the only time you're happy about a week 5 bye is you got a bunch of early season injuries.
Yeah, I think the thing that's toughest about Detroit, just looking at their schedule, they play 1 game at home between October 1st and Thanksgiving. That's tough.
Yeah.
At Dallas, at Minnesota, home against Tennessee, at Green Bay, at Houston. I guess 2, because then they're home on November 17th against Jacksonville. And then they're on the road again against Indianapolis on November 24th. So 2 home games from the Monday Night Football game on September 30th through Thanksgiving. They have 2 games at home. That's a tough stretch.
Got a good chance to be 4-0 going into that bye, though.
Yeah, kind of low key like the Tampa rematch too. Week 2, that should be a fun game. Is
this a real thing that the Lions are playing the Giants 2 weeks in a row in preseason? Is that a typo? Is there something that
is that they got the Hall of Fame game? No, that's got to be an incorrect, because the second date is before the first date.
Okay, if you go to Pro Football Reference right now, they have the Lions.
Week 1, Saturday, August 10th. Week 2, Thursday, August 8th. So
absolutely insane. Yeah,
that's not true. I'm pretty confident in saying that.
Giants, Chiefs, Steelers is their preseason.
Okay, so we just got a double dip, I guess.
Double.
The second date was it? I'm assuming the first one's the Hall of Fame game.
I don't know. It's Thursday the
8th.
No, it's at MetLife Stadium, so it is not the Hall of Fame game.
Hall of Fame game.
It is not.
Man, that means we're like 10 weeks away from the Hall of Fame game.
Okay, we've talked about this Hall of Fame game. Let's figure out what the heck it is. It's the Bears and the Texans.
What odd
August 1st. Well, it's relative to the guys going in. So Andre Johnson's going in. Who's the Bears guy going in this year?
Is Hester in?
I feel like we should know this. Devin Hester, yes, Devin Hester, and Julius Peppers. I don't think of him as a Bear at all. But
he's a Panther. Come on,
right, he's a Panther, right?
He's a Panther. All right. So, in consensus with Detroit, like this team, like the setup, some favorable things with the schedule. They're going to be home heavy early and home heavy late. I believe they only play 2 outdoor games.
Oh, really?
Isn't that a storyline? Jared Goff's only going to play 2 games outdoors all season long.
We can do this at Arizona, at Dallas, at Minnesota. Green Bay's one of them. Houston,
at Green Bay, but that's
Chicago.
November 3rd. It's
Green Bay, Chicago. Oh no, San Francisco. That's outside. So 3 outside games.
Okay, so 14 out of 17 games are indoors.
That ain't the world that ain't the world I live in. I'll tell you that.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Wouldn't be mad if that was the world you lived in.
They got two teams in the division that are indoors. What's the North AFC, the NFC North? That's crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing? Open up the air.
Green Bay's got
a little chill in there.
Green Bay's got a huge home field advantage in that
right?
division.
Because you're playing dome teams in Detroit and Minnesota. What are we doing?
Remember when Minnesota played at the Gophers Stadium there for a bit?
Yeah, that was a weird season.
What was the situation with that they played there?
Yeah, didn't the roof on the was it whatever dome?
The Metrodome?
Yeah, freaking collapsed. Like, kept on getting snow on the top. Like every it was like I was numb to the headlines. Oh, the roof collapsed again in Minnesota. Like, okay, happens every week. What are we doing here? Now they got a Taj Mahal to play football in, so it worked out.
I would love to go to that stadium.
Looks beautiful. I've not been to it. Yeah.
2013. No. Minnesota Vikings, this is AI. I'm not going to trust it. Never mind. As the further we go with the AI, like auto responses for curating things, the more I find they're wrong. We're not going to trust it. I'll do the research on my own. We'll figure it out another day and time. That's going to do it for us here with the Detroit Lions Deep Dive on Locked On NFL Scouting. Tomorrow on the show, we're doing the Green Bay Packers. Yep. Another team that should have a lot to be excited about. They're a team that's on $50 million club quarterback contract watch with Jordan Love. Seems like Brian Gutekunst wants to get something done before training camp. We'll spotlight that and the rest of the Packers tomorrow on the show. We hope you come back and see us. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Make it a great rest of your day.